I took a whole bag full of Xbox 360 games to the Arkansas Retro Expo, and I went to a bunch of different vendors and said, "Hey, are you interested in trading anything? So come along with me to the expo and see what I could find to trade for." Starting off, I went to Brandon from Arkansas Picker. He put on this show. It was totally awesome, and so I pulled out everything from my backpack and I said, "Okay, here's everything I've got. What would you be interested in?" So he went ahead and looked through what I had and he grabbed a few games here. And then kind of we went back and forth a little bit, talked about kind of what we were thinking. And then we settled on an amount to basically trade for. And then once we finally did that, was when the time was finally here to kind of make the deal and then go over to the games next door and then kind of go through it. Now, as you can see, we were kind of going back and forth here and talking, making jokes. And then we went to the games. I went right over to the Xbox 360 section where I was just going through and seeing what caught my eye, what was interesting. And so I pulled out a bunch of games and then I realized, hey, we're pretty close here. So I kind of looked for more stuff. I didn't end up getting all of this that you see right here. And you'll see why, because I was a little bit over, but we ended up talking here and I said, "Hey, what about these 5 games here?" And so he kind of gave him a little time and he kind of looked. I put back this Power Rangers game. It did look interesting to me and might have been fun to plug in my Kinect and play it. I kind of like those weird and wacky games, but there's some good stuff here that we were looking through. And so finally, I narrowed it down to the 5 games that I was going to end up getting. And that's when I started talking to Brandon again because he got busy because he was selling a ton of stuff, which was awesome. But we came together and talked. I said, "Hey, here's what it was." I think this was like $1 more than what we had agreed on for the price. So for that, it was definitely well worth it. He was happy, I was happy, and I got some Xbox 360 games that I don't already have in my collection, like Viva Pinata Party Animals. I've never actually played this game, but I don't have the Party Animals version, so I ended up grabbing that. And then again, all of these games are games I don't have. Is Far Cry Instincts Predator. I feel like people probably don't care too much about this game, and I'll probably play it once and see if it's fun. If it is, I'll play it again, but if not, oh well, I traded for it. And then I ended up grabbing this Gears of War 2 Game of the Year edition. This looked cool in this artwork with the box around it, so I ended up grabbing that. Then I ended up grabbing Fairy Tale Fights. I have this for the PS3, and it's actually a ton of fun. It's weird and wacky and like over the top. It's fairy tales, but like murderous ones where they kill a bunch of stuff, and it's crazy and gory, and it's rated mature for a reason. And last but not least, Tekken 6, I believe. Yes, I don't have this game, and I figured I would pick it up and see if it was well worth it. But these are not all the games that I ended up getting, so let's head back out to the convention and see what else I can trade for. So then I went over to Bowman Games booth over here. He was busy when I first got there, but once people cleared out, I came up to him and said, "Hey, you ready to do another trade?" And he was glad to. So I pulled out the Xbox 360 games that I had left here, and he kind of looked through it, and the only one he ended up wanting was Grand Theft Auto 5 here, and perfectly well worth picking up. And so he wanted that, and so I went ahead and agreed to trade that for him. And so right underneath his table was where he had all his Xbox 360 games, and I went right away to start looking, and I knew right when I saw it that I was going to end up trading for Portal 2. So I grabbed it. I ended up saying, "Hey, are you interested in trading for this?" And he agreed. And so we talked back and forth, and I ended up trading Grand Theft Auto 5 for Portal 2 on the Xbox 360. I think I might have this in my collection. Honestly, I don't remember if I have this in the orange box or if I actually have this on the Xbox 360 by itself. So for trading Grand Theft Auto 5 for Portal 2, to me, is a no-brainer, so I wanted to do that, especially when I saw the spine of it down below. I was like, okay, this is the game I'm getting, so I ended up grabbing it. An absolutely amazing game if you've never played it, but I'm really happy that I traded for this, so let's see what else I can trade for. Then I made my way over to Eric Murray's booth, who, if you didn't know, puts on the Oklahoma Gaming Frenzy. He's always doing some awesome stuff, so I always like to trade with him. So we kind of sat there, we talked back and forth to see what kind of games he was interested in and which one he wanted to grab. And so we talked for a little bit here and there while he was kind of checking the prices and checking the condition. And then he decided on the game he wanted. So I went ahead and grabbed the other two and put those back in my bag. And he said about $10 is probably about the trade value. And so I headed over to the Xbox 360 section after I put the games in my backpack. And we kind of looked around for a while here and there. And then I ended up seeing something that kind of caught my eye that I think was probably the best game here within the budget. Of course, you could see me looking around here and there for just a little bit, but I kept going back to one game, and that ended up being kind of an interesting game, I think, and that ended up being Bionic Commando. It's over here. I looked at it more than once, and so I finally figured let's go ahead and trade for that. But before we could trade, he was talking to Michael from Nerd Nation over there. Shout out to him. And then I came over and said, do you have a deal here? And he said, yeah, let's do it. So I am glad to add a Bionic Commando to my Xbox 360 section. I don't really know too much about this. I remember playing the first one, obviously, but I never played it for the Xbox 360, so I figured I would check it out. It also says that it plays on the Xbox One and the 360, so that's kind of cool. I love when games are backwards compatible, so that is totally awesome there. But again, a game I don't have that I traded away duplicates for, any day I'll take that, and I'm happy with it. So I'm glad I traded for this, but we still got to trade some more games here. And then I made my way over to the Limestone Pickers vendor booth, where I had walked by and he said, hey, I recognize you. And I was like, well, I recognize you too. And then I was promptly quick to say, would you like to do a trade? And of course he was gracious and said yes. And so I pulled out the last two remaining Xbox 360 games that I have here. I think we kind of went back and forth to decide which game he wanted to trade for. All I had left by now was Gears of War 3 and then NCAA Football 12, I believe. It might have been 13, but it was one of the cheaper ones, honestly. And so we kind of talked back and forth here, and he ended up saying, I'll take the NCAA football, and I ended up keeping Gears of War 3. And then he kind of looked around for a little bit here, and that is when he ended up saying, hey, what about trading for Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen? And I was like, I don't know anything about this game, but this game looks totally awesome, so of course I would welcome and be happy to do that trade. So I ended up picking up this game that on the back, honestly, I don't know much about this game, but it looks like it could be a ton of fun. If you know anything about this, comment down below and let me know. But I'm glad to be adding this to my collection. And I just realized I've been adding a lot of Capcom games into this video. So that's kind of an interesting fact that I wasn't expecting. But this game looks like a ton of fun. I'm going to have to put it in my Xbox 360 and give it a try. But I've got one more trade left, so let's head back out and see what I got. So I took my last remaining Xbox 360 game over to Register Retro. I talked to him earlier, and this little kid is selling stuff, which is totally awesome. I talked to him earlier in the convention, and by this point, I said, okay, he's got to be on this list. He's a cool young dude trading and doing stuff, and I've seen him in Arkansas Pickers videos before, so I figured I got to go trade with him if he's interested. And so we talked a little bit. He, of course, checked it out and saw how much it was worth. Tried to give me a more expensive game, and I was like, no, we're not going to do that. He was trying to hook it up. But then he kind of dug through a little bit here and there, a little bit more. And that's when he ended up grabbing The Crew from the Xbox 360. Obviously, I don't know why I keep saying that, but he ended up grabbing this right out and said, hey, you want to trade for this? And I said, yeah, sure. I've never played it, and it's a game that I don't have, so I'm happy to add this. This little dude was doing some good deals and wheeling dealing. So I'm glad I went to him last for this video. But I ended up picking up yet again another Xbox 360 game that I don't have, which is totally awesome. Trading this for Gears of War 3 is awesome. I've already got that game, so trading old games for games that I don't have are definitely well worth it. So I'm glad that I traded for this. So there you have it. I traded a bunch of Xbox 360 games that I already had in my collection for games that I don't already have, which is totally awesome. I love going to these conventions with duplicate games and seeing what I could trade for, because I have no use for extra copies of games if I've already got games that are good and the discs are happy. So I'm glad to take those duplicates and trade them. It's always fun to see what I could trade for. Sometimes I get games that aren't worth it, and sometimes I get games that are. And obviously, these are all games that I deem are worth trading for. You may not, but let me know here what you think is the best game that I traded for down below in the comments. I think from my perspective, it might be Portal 2, but there's some other good games here, like Fairy Tale Fights jumps out at me, and Tekken 6 maybe. These are all awesome games. I think those might be my favorite, but what do you think? Comment down below and let me know. But honestly, I got to get out of here. I've got some games to test and play, so check that video out if you haven't already. But overall, I took a bunch of Xbox 360 games that I had no use for and traded them in for other games that I will definitely play and enjoy. So to me, this was definitely worth it. But I want to know what you think. Comment down below and let me know. But I'm getting out of here, like I said, so check that video out if you haven't already.